العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء ورحمة الله على محبيهم ومواليهم وشيعتهم أجمعين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم وقتلتهم وغاسل حقوقهم ومنكر فضائلهم والعليم. أما بعد, for the happiness of Hazrat Zahra Marziyah, for the enlightenment of the graves of your marhumin, of the graves of the Shahadat, Ulama and Siddiqeen, for the safety of the followers of Ahlul Bayt around the world, and for the safety and the hastening of the reappearance of Hazrat Baqiyatullah al-A'zam Allahum al-Fida, please recite your loudest salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who is Rahman and the one who is Rahim. It's an honor to be given this opportunity to come and speak in front of you, brothers and sisters. I know we've been trying for well over a year to try and find a date where I was available to come and recite. So alhamdulillah, it's an honor to be here. Wherever I go, especially on this Majlis, because the Majlis of the Istishhad of Imam al-Askari has a double significance. One, obviously, it being the Shahadat of the 11th Imam, but secondly, it is the traditional end to our 2 months and 8 days of mourning. And tomorrow, rightfully or wrongfully, that I'll leave to your understandings, people will begin to celebrate something called Eid al-Zahra, Farhat al-Zahra, or these things. Garche, it is still the day of the Shahadat of the Imam. But, or whether or not it has any historical significance, again, we'll leave that to your understandings and your own interpretations of history. But what can be said of tomorrow is, yes, it is the first day of the imamate of our Imam. Allah. But at this point, it is a good juncture to look back at the Ayyam al-Azhar. 2 months and 8 days we have been mourning for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. And what is it that I have gained from that majlis, from those days? You know, there are certain specific types of rizq that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places in this world at certain times of the year. Certain places, certain times, certain days, where the bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is more profound and more expressed across the world. There are places like Karbala, for example, where it says that as long as you are under the dome of Sayyid al-Shahadat, whatever you want to ask from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can ask, and Allah will continue to give you. That's one of those portals towards the divine grace. Layal al-Qadr, the nights of Qadr, and the whole month of Shahr Ramadan, but specifically the nights of Qadr, are one of those portals towards Allah, because Laylatul Qadr khayrun min alf shahr. That one night of the night of Qadr is equivalent to 1,000 months, yani one lifetime worth of ibadat, 82 or something years, that one night of Qadr is equivalent to. Imagine what I do in that one night will translate to 82 years worth of worship. And sometimes it happens that we begin to sometimes waste our Layal al-Qadr when we have this opportunity. You know, Laylatul Qadr comes, it's better than 1,000 months, 1 year, one lifetime worth of worship, and we spend it making up for the year that we didn't do anything. So we spend it doing 100 rakat qaza salah. Yeah, because we spent a whole year wasting time not praying our salah on time, so we waste Laylatul Qadr trying to make up for the qadha, not progressing. not going forward. So Layal al-Qadr comes and Layal al-Qadr goes, and I'm exactly the same. Year in, year out, exactly the same. Come to the 10 nights of Muharram. The Urafa, the Ulama, they say that in the first 10 nights of the holy month of Muharram, there is a very specific rizq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is given to the mu'mineen. The rizq of majalis, the rizq of tears, the rizq of the azaa of Imam al-Hussein. Where at the very least, what one can achieve in those first 10 nights is the forgiveness of every single one of their sins. Yani the very least that you can achieve, coming and shedding one tear for Imam al-Hussein, يُحِتُّ الظَّنُوبَ الْعِذَامِ, it will consume every single one of your sins. That's the least. Imagine then if I went with understanding where I could reach. Because Imam Hussein alayhi salam is that Imam that took someone like Hur from the depth of hell, and within moments took him towards the heights that even now whenever we recite that ziyarah, we say, Bi abi antum wa ummi, that may my father and mother be sacrificed over you, Hur. That Imam Hussein alayhi salam is that Kareem Imam that will take you from the depth, this lowly depth, and take you to the heights of existence. And Hur, Zahiran, we only hear about Hur, but there were many other people that joined Imam al-Hussein even after Hur from the army of Yazid. For example, you have Ibn Hutuf and his brother Sa'ad. They came right at the last moment after Zuhr Ashur, meaning all of the Ashab had been killed, all of the Bani Hashim had been killed, even Ali Asghar had been killed, only Aba Abdullah remained alone. At that moment, these two brothers look at each other, they say, what have we done? They hear Imam al-Hussein call out, Hal min Nasr yansuruna. I say, what have we done? They leave the army of Yazid. When? Zuhr Ashur. They come over to Imam al-Hussein, say, Yabna Rasulillah, we were there when they killed your Ali Akbar, and we were laughing. We watched as your Abbas lie on the ground. We stood by while they slaughtered your Ali Asghar. Halim min Tawbah, will we be forgiven, Ya Aba Abdullah? Imam al-Hussein looks towards them, says, now that you have come to Hussein, all is forgiven. Hussein is that Kareem Imam, that even at Zuhr Ashur, when everyone has gone and there's no one left by his side, these two men come by the side of Imam al-Hussein. He says, yes, he lifts them from the bottom of degradation, takes them to the height that today, when you go to Karbala, their names are inscribed upon the Dharih of Imam al-Hussein. So the very least that I can gain is the forgiveness of my sins. The medium level is salvation. But the height is what? That when I understand why I'm coming to the Majlis of Imam al-Hussein, I understand the sanctity and the importance of the Majlis of Imam al-Hussein, and then I cry for Imam al-Hussein. Now the hadith changes. Before it was like you're crying for Imam al-Hussein without understanding. Without understanding. One tear falls, you hear the Masa'ib, one tear falls, all of your sins are forgiven. But now it says something different. If you understand Imam al-Hussein, you understand what Imam al-Hussein is all about. Why it is that Imam al-Hussein went to Karbala. Why it is that Imam al-Hussein did what he did. Now if you cry for him, no, you don't cry for him. The narration changes, says, Man baka al-Hussein. You do buka on Imam al-Hussein. You cry loudly with a loud voice. Why? Because you understand. You have ma'rifah of the Imam. And then when you do buka with the ma'rifah of Imam, it's not just your sins are forgiven. No, the narration changes. It says, Man baka ala al-Hussein, arifan bihaqqihi, wajibat lahu al-Jannah. Jannah becomes wajib upon you. Jannah becomes obligatory upon you. There is no way that you could not enter into Jannah. Why? Because when you cry, you wail for Imam al-Hussein, that you don't enter Jannah from normal doors. You enter through Bab al-Hussein. Inna al-Hussein babun min abwab al-Jannah. Hussein surely is one of the doors of Jannah. Hell has 7 doors. Heaven has 8. The 8th door is known as Bab al-Hussein. There is a very specific type of rizq that is given to us during these ayyam azaf, especially during the first 10 nights. The question that I have for you, for the brothers talking at the back, the question that I have for you, yes, thank you. Question I have for you is this, that what has changed in my life? Muharram came, Muharram went. 30 years, 40 years, 50 years of my life have passed by. What change came in my life from the Majlis of Imam al-Hussein? From the Azaa of Imam al-Hussein? Because Imam al-Hussein went to Karbala for Islah. وَإِنَّمَا خَرَجْتُ لِطَلَبِ الْإِصْلَاحِ فِي أُمَّةِ جَدِّي. I have left in order to do reformation within the ummah of my grandfather. What reformed within me? Have I become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because Hussein alayhi salam was taking us towards liqa Allah, was taking us towards meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Have I been able to get closer to Allah? Or am I exactly the same as I was? Was I exactly the same? Am I exactly the very same person I was at the start of the holy month of Muharram? If I am exactly the same, I still have the same diseases within my soul. I still have those same issues within me. I still have those bad moral characteristics manifesting within myself. That the Majlis of Imam al-Hussein has been of no use to me. At least in terms of my progression. If I'm the same, this message of Imam al-Hussein hasn't taken me anywhere. And if I'm stagnated, then slowly stagnation will breed sin. In the same way that stagnant water begins to smell and let off a stench, the stagnant soul also lets off a stench. When I'm not progressing, I'm not developing myself on a daily basis, I stagnate. And then the waswasa of shaitan begins to take hold, and I begin to become more inclined towards sins. I begin to become more inclined towards moving away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if I'm in a state of movement, of continuous improvement, even if I fall, it's okay. Even if I sin, it's okay, because I'll still go and do istighfar for those sins. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran says that Allah surely loves mufattin tawwab, those individuals who do constant tawbah. Who do constant tawbah. Meaning what? They constantly slip up, but they constantly turn back to Allah. And they say to Allah, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done what I did. They go back over and over towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what we should have gained from the Majlis of Imam al-Hussein. Have I gained that closeness to Allah? If I haven't, then I have one last opportunity, and that is tonight. Those brothers that are talking at the back again on that side now, if you wouldn't mind. Actually, you know what? Why don't you stand up and come to the front here? It'll be a lot better. All 3 of you, you're young people, all 4 of you. Why not? And you 4 elders on the back there of the chairs. Yes, yeah, you as well. Everyone with the hat as well. Yes, you 4 brothers there as well. I'm sure you're old enough to hold your own bodies up with your strength.
Muhammad Salah.
Now I can see you better. You know, all the way back there, I was struggling to see your faces. Today we have gathered to commemorate the istishhad of the 11th Imam. The Imam who met his shahadat in the youngest of all of the Imams, 28 years old. The Imam was when he was poisoned. His Shahadat, or his period of Imamate, is only 6 years. But those 6 years, from the age of 22 until 28, those 6 years that the Imam had to deal with were fraught with a number of specific issues that the Imam had to, on a daily basis, face. You know that Imam alayhi salam, his whole time was spent in Samarra, his whole life. Samarra was a garrison town. You know, when Imam is referred to Al-Askari, Askar is a military fort. The name itself, the lakab of the Imam itself, has a lot of madhlumiyat in it. Because Al-Askari means the one that was forced, or the one that grew up inside a military fort. The city of Samarra was a military garrison that the Imam was forced to stay there. Imam al-Hadi came, then Imam al-Askari spent the vast majority of his life, bar 1 or 2 years where he was outside, but the vast majority of that time he spent within Samarra. And I want to look at a few key points from the life of the Imam, and then one hadith, and then we'll move towards the musibah of the moments of the final days of Imam al-Askari. There were very specific things that happened during the time of the Imam, and we're going to look at about 4 of them. The first one was that Bani al-Abbas, who had been in power for a number of decades now, were now at their weakest. The whole court of Bani al-Abbas was taken over by the Turks. The Turkmen that they had brought in as soldiers to fortify their kingdoms had now become the puppet masters. And although Bani al-Abbas Zahiran was sitting upon the Khilafat, but the people pulling the string were those Turkmen soldiers that were in the court of the Abbasids. And Imam al-Askari lived through the lives of 3 of these Khulafa: Mu'taz, Mu'tadi, and Mu'tamid. Mu'taz was that individual that was the first time that the Turks showed their strength. They took him from the throne. He was sitting on his throne. They took him from his throne. They stripped him naked. They whipped him in public in front of everyone. Then they took him and they buried him alive in the basement of the castle. And then they brought in his son Muhtadi. And he only stayed for about a year. Relatively, he was a lot better than his father, but he still was in this constant state of plotting on how to kill the 11th Imam. And then after 1 year, when he's got rid of, Mu'tamad comes in, who was the most extravagant from all of Bani al-Abbas. The Ummah during the time of Mu'tamad faced so much economic hardship that people were financially crushed. Even during this time, Imam alayhi salam was forced to report to the court twice a week, on a Monday and a Thursday, to make sure that he hadn't left Samarra. He would come every Monday and every Thursday to sign and say that he was still inside Samarra. The Imam was constantly under watch. And that leads us to the second key thing about the life of the Imam. The Imam was constantly under watch. Why? Because the Shia population had exploded. Throughout the whole Muslim Ummah, right now the Shia population had exploded. Samarkand, Bayhaq, Tus, Ahwaz, Qom, Nishapur, Khurasan, Baghdad, Sistan, Basra, following Imam al-Rada. Now the Shia population was growing massively, and each of these places that I just listed had huge Shia populations, huge Shia economic wealth, businessmen, people who were pulling the strings in these areas. And so strong Shias needed their Imam. Strong Shias needed their Imam, but they had an Imam who was under constant watching, constant watch of Bani al-Abbas. And so the Imam had to devise a unique way of contacting these individuals. The Imam had started this system of wukala. You know, the system of representatives started way back from the time of even Amir al-Mu'mineen. where the Imam would give them authority, you give fatwas. Your sixth Imam would say to Zurara ibn A'yun, said to Zurara, sit in the masjid and give fatwas to the people. Yeah, and so this system had been created already, but when it reaches the time of the 11th Imam, now the system is very robust, the system of wukala. But because of the oppression, the Imam had to utilize an interesting, various different ways of communicating with his wukala, with his representatives, and with the Shi'as. They couldn't just come and meet the Imam directly. They would have to, even the Imam, in his private gatherings, there would be spies in there. Abu Hisham, he says that one day that I was sitting with the Imam, I wanted to ask him something, and the Imam shook his head at me. So I stayed quiet. After people began to leave, the Imam said there was a spy of Bani Abbas amongst us. He was listening in. Do not ask me. The Imam would even say, even when I leave my home to go to the court to sign to say I'm still here, don't look at me. Don't say salam to me. Don't even nod your head at me, because there are spies everywhere looking for my Shi'as. And so there were so many Shi'as. It was so difficult for the Imam to communicate with the masses. So he utilized this system of trusted wukala, of representatives that existed throughout the whole of the Islamic empire. And the Imam had to adopt and develop covert methods of communicating with these individuals. One of those individuals, Dawood ibn Aswad, is a wood seller. He says that one day the Imam alayhi salam called me to his home, and I went to the Imam, and the Imam gave me a stick. And he said to me that, Dawood, I want you to go and give this stick to Uthman ibn Sa'id. Uthman ibn Sa'id was one of the wukala of the Imam. So he says, I took the stick, I thought very weird, an asa from the Imam for Uthman ibn Sa'id. Zahiran, Uthman ibn Sa'id doesn't even need an asa. So he says, anyway, I took it and I was making my way, and along the way, when I was going towards Uthman ibn Sa'id, there was a traffic jam. Yeah, in that time, camels and donkeys and horses. So he says, I was trying to get someone to move, and this person wasn't moving. It got heated, and I got angry. So I got this stick and I hit his horse to move it, or his camel to move it out of the way. When I hit it, he says that this stick broke, and I realized that it was hollow. And inside I could see that there were letters in there. He says, I quickly gathered the stick and I ran back to the Imam, explained what happened to the Imam. And the Imam said to me, he said, look, even if they swear at you, he says, why did you get angry? Why did you lash out? Because even if they swear at me, your Imam, don't say anything. Stay quiet, because the situation is so dangerous. There are spies everywhere. Uthman ibn Sa'id himself, one of the representatives of the Imam, he was an oil seller, and he developed a 2-chamber oil pot where the upper chamber was full of oil that he would sell. The bottom chamber was where he would hide the letters and the communicate of the Imam, from the Imam and to the Imam. And in this way, the Imam alayhi salam began to communicate. The fourth specific thing about the third specific thing about the life and the times of the Imam was that the situation was extremely bad for the people of Iraq. I said, Mu'tamad, when he came into power, he was extremely extravagant for himself and for his family members. Much like the third Khalifa during the time of Bani Umayyah. He spent much of Baytul Mal upon his own family, and the Muslims fell into economic degradation. Mu'tamad was exactly the same for Bani al-Abbas. It became so bad, because of so many people being imprisoned for various random things. Whatever would happen, put them into prison. But you know that the prison system is a huge drain on any economy. So when you have hundreds and thousands of people imprisoned, you still have to feed them. You still have to maintain them to some extent, however small it is. So these mass imprisonments were taking a massive toll. His extravagance was having a huge toll upon the treasury. And alongside their mismanagement generally of all the funds that was happening. In addition to that, you have the revolution of an individual called Ali ibn Muhammad, Sahib-e-Zanj. Amir al-Mu'mineen in khutbah number 128 of Nahj al-Balagha predicts this about the city of Basra. This happens in about 255 Hijri. This man, Ali ibn Muhammad, he claims to be a Sayyid from the lineage of Imam al-Sajjad. Incorrect, he wasn't. And historians have proved it, and the Imams themselves distanced themselves from him. But Ali ibn Muhammad, slave that frees himself, and he leads a populist revolution in Basra. And what he does is he takes over Basra and rules over Basra for 14 years. But his rule is so despotic that within 14 years, 300,000 people are killed. They're killed at the sword, and 30,000 were just in the first 2 years. 30,000 were killed just in the first 2 years. He leads this revolution. He gets all of the slaves on his side. All of the slaves turn against their masters, and all of their masters are brought out, and all of them are given 500 lashes and are forced to become slaves. And all of their wives of the masters are then sold in the slave market for 3 dirham each to whoever wants to buy them. It was an extremely horrible revolution, extremely bloody, and one full of oppression. And for 14 years, he ruled over Basra. And in that time, people became so hungry that they resorted to eating the cats and the dogs of Basra. And when the cats and dogs were not enough, they resorted to cannibalism. Whoever would die, they would eat that person, because that was the economic situation of the people of Basra under Sahib Zanj. And then eventually at this point he's overthrown and he's killed and it returns back. But these things were happening during the time of the Imam, and the Imam is having to still govern the whole Ummah while all of these things are happening. Economic downturn, the deviance on the seats of Khilafat, and all of these things. But despite this, Imam alayhi salam still managed to send some letters, some hadith to his companions that up until now are of huge use to us. And so I want to look at one of the hadith of Imam al-Askari salawatullah wasalam. In this hadith, Imam alayhi salam, he talks about 4 groups of people and who the best are amongst them. Says he talks about those that are the abstinents, the Ahle Wara, the worshippers, those that do ibadat, the aesthetics, so the ascetics even, those that practice asceticism, the Urafa, those that live simple life, and those that are courageous, those that are strong. So in this hadith, Imam says the first group, Al-Wara' awra' an-nas, the most abstinent of all of you, man waqafa 'inda shubhat. He says it's the one that stops himself from every doubtful thing. Al-Wara' is a stage which is above or an offshoot of taqwa, one could argue. Your taqwa is just God consciousness. We're still trying to achieve taqwa, but there is a level above taqwa that we have to reach, and that is wara'. And the realm of wara' has 4 stages as well within it. Wara' translates to abstinence. Taqwa is God consciousness, or fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as one ascends. And not fear for hell, but fear of losing that connection in the final realms of love. The Urafah speak about it. But taqwa at the very base level is God consciousness. That everything I do in my life, I'm conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm conscious of Allah with my friends, with my work, with my school. Everything that I do, the forefront of all of my actions is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from me is how then I live my life. But that's the base level. That's the basics. Above it is the level of wara'. And in fact, one of the signs of the ashab of the Imam of our time, Imam al-Mahdi arwah in a hadith from the 6th Imam, he says, "Man sarrahu an yakuna bil ashab al-qa'im falyantadhir wal ya'mal bil wara' wa mahasin al-akhlaq." He says those that wish to be from amongst the ashab of the qa'im must have 3 things. The first is that the first is that these individuals من صرف أن يكون من أصحاب القائم فلينتظر. They must do active intidhar, active throughout their life. Every single day they wake up, they must be in remembrance of their Imam. Everything in their life must be geared to the remembrance of their Imam. Everything that they do must be for the pleasure of the Imam. فلينتظر وَلْيَعْمَلْ بِالْوَرَعِ. And when they do a'mal, they do it at the level of wara', not taqwa. So wara' means to abstain. At the very base level of wara' is when one abstains from those things that will cause a person to sin. Yeah, that's the first stage. But the second stage is that one then begins to move away from those things that there is the potential for sin. Then at the third stage is when one moves away from those things that there is shubha within there. It's doubtful. And then the final stage is the one that moves away from everything that does not take him towards Allah. So those friends, those gatherings, those movies, those everything, yeah, that doesn't take me towards Allah, I abstain from them. Here the 11th Imam saying, Awra'un nas, the most abstinent of mankind is the one that stays away from all those things that have shubha within them, that have doubt within them. So your things that are makruh, for example, your makruhat, many times we enjoy eating the makruhat as well. You know, liver, and kidney, and heart, these organs, you know, people enjoy eating them. But they're makruh. Yeah? When it comes at the level of wara', although I'm being very sort of basic with the example, but you take it to a higher level as well, where you could say that anyone who, or any sort of gathering where you think there is the potential. So for example, I know if I go and meet this set of friends, they will always do ghiba, or they will listen to music, or they will potentially, there's a potential that they may lead me towards something haram. So I do wara' from those friends, from those things that are doubtful, that I'm not sure. So the Imam says, awra'un nas. If you want to achieve the highest realm of wara', it is stay away from all of those individuals or those things that have doubt within them. That you doubt their sincerity, you doubt their ability to take you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second thing the Imam says, أَعْبُدُ النَّاسِ مَنْ أَقَامَ الفَّرَائِضِ. He says that the most worshipful, the most obedient in worship from amongst you is the one who fulfills his wajibat before everything else. He does his wajibat before everything else. And it is these wajibat that will take you and raise you towards a level. And when you do them and give them importance before everything, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself will take you to the higher realms. Allah will raise you to those higher realms. Sometimes we put our wajibat on the back burner. Oh, I'll pray a bit later, not right now, I've got work to do, I'm going to just finish this game, I'm going to do this, and then I'll pray. So no, that's not ibadah. Arguably we can say that this is shirk al-khafi, this is the hidden shirk, where you place something over Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't necessarily have to bow in front of an idol to be a mushrik, to do shirk. In the realms of love, in the realms of irfan, in the realms of knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even this act of placing something, your wajibat, behind anything else. Yeah, so your wajibat, I don't know, I'm playing a game of FIFA and I need to finish this game of FIFA. But, you know, I'm online and other people are on and I can't, but it's the time of salah. So now, what do? I'll just finish this game and then I'll pray. That game of FIFA now has become shirk. Has made me a mushrik. Because I put Allah at the back burner and I put FIFA as being my idol and the thing that I'm worshipping. At the time of the worship of Allah, I'm doing something other than the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You see these fara'id, in order to attain them, it's difficult, it's not easy. Ubudiyya, to establish aqam al-fara'id, to establish the wajibat, it's not easy. It's not a simple task. You know, people are, oh, it's so hard. Yeah, that's the point. It's supposed to be hard. Yeah, because through difficulty do you achieve maqamat. You don't go to the gym and just walk in and smell the gym and all of a sudden develop a large chest and big biceps, and you have to put the effort in. Until you don't put the effort in, then that body is not going to come, until your diet isn't right, until your training regime isn't right. In the same way with the fara'id, with the wajibat, with the journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will not be achieved. It won't make any sense as well. By the way, this is another thing. People are like, I want ma'rifah to come to me, then I'll do it. When I understand, then I'll pray. When I understand, then I'll do hijab. But it doesn't work that way. See, in Islam, Islam is first, Iman is after. Islam means to submit. When you submit wholly to the will of God, then Iman will come. Then ma'rifah will come. You don't gain ma'rifah beforehand. You do certain actions you need to do, you don't understand. I do a lot of martial arts, and the last martial art that I've been doing in the last 10 years is Wing Chun. Now, when I started this martial art, for the last 3-4 years, for the first 3-4 years I was doing this, I was like, what is this? Makes no sense. But now 10-12 years later, you ask me and I'll tell you what this is. Yeah, you can defend, you can attack, you can do everything. But at the start, it made no sense. So what did I do? I placed my trust in the master who was teaching, because he knew better than me. He knew better than me because he'd already gone through the stages. And he was at the highest level. Then I thought to myself, wow, why don't I do that with my wajibat? Because this is a human being that I'm putting my trust in. That this simple hand movement will save my face from being smashed by a punch. And I'm putting all the trust in this person, knowing that this person has done it for years. Then one of the Lord of the worlds, who has prescribed for me certain actions. He has made salah wajib. He has made hijab wajib. I may not understand it. But one day, when I just do it and I submit, one day it will all make sense. The realms of sayn and suluk, the realms of moving towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are fraught with difficulties. It's fraught with difficulties. It's more difficult than training your physical body. It's, you ask anyone, is it easier to go to the gym and bicep curl something, run for 30 minutes, or getting out of bed for Fajr in the morning? Which is easier? Getting out of bed is a lot harder, because it's ubudiyah. Ubudiyah is much harder. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sometimes, a lot of the times, you come some way, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes you the rest of the way. This is, that being salik and being majzub. Salik is the one that travels. Majzub is the one that gets jazb, that gets absorbed, that gets pulled from one maqam to the other. To change from salik to majzub, it requires a mindset that I'm doing this and I don't want anything in return. I'm doing this truly qurbatan ilallah. When I'm becoming salik and I'm walking upon the path, Musa alayhi salam was salik. وَلَمَّا جَاءَ مُوسَى إِلَى مِيقَاتٍ. When Musa came to the miqat, the aim of Musa was what? The miqat. This lamma ja that the Quran says, the Urafa say, this is that realm of sayr and suluk. This is that sirat of Musa that he had to walk in order to achieve the greatness. But the greatness of Rasulullah is this, that when Musa alayhi salam had to walk to the miqat, when it comes to our Rasulullah, our Prophet of God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Subhanallazi asra bi'abdihi laylan. He raises his abd. Why is it that Musa had to walk and the Prophet was raised? Because Muhammad is abd. Is abd. At the height of ubudiyah. At that highest realm of ubudiyah, when you reach that realm, then you get jazb, you get drawn towards Allah. So one has to walk the path. And then at one point it makes sense. So he says, the most obedient of you is the one who places his wajibat at the forefront of everything. The next thing the Imam says, Says, Azhadun nas man taraka al-haram. Says, the most zahid of you, the most ascetic of you is the one that walks away from things that are haram. He turns his back on all those things that are haram. Haram is always the easier option. Sin is always easier. Ibadat and following the commands of Allah is always more difficult. Place any sin in your mind, and that sin is much easier to do than walking away. But the kamal of a human being is that he walks away from that sin. His ascension is that he walks away. The Imam says, Azhadun nas is not the one that is praying all night and standing on the musalla of ibadat constantly in the middle of the night. Yes, that has its virtues. Says, but the most ascetic of you is the one that turns his back on sin. Sin presents himself. He has the strength to turn away from it. Otherwise, I can pray and still sin. But to become zahid truly, to have that zuhd truly, is to be able to turn my back on sin. That's more harder than ibadat as well at times. To walk away from a sin towards ibadat is much harder. It's much harder. And Amir al-Mu'mineen, he doesn't say that zuhd, asceticism, isn't that you don't own anything. You know, he says zuhd, asceticism, is not that you do not own anything. You can have nice houses, nice cars, nice phones, nice clothing. You can have all of this. He says zuhd is not that you do not own anything. Rather, zuhd is that nothing owns you. That which you have been given, if tomorrow it leaves you, don't wail about it and cry about it and mope around about it. Allah gave you, Allah took away from you. And when I understand that whatever I have is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and only from Allah, that is zuhd. That is zuhd. Otherwise, I have nothing of myself. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Ya ayyuhal insan, antum kal marda, that you are like ill people. Wa rabbul alameen kat tabib, and the Lord of the worlds is the doctor. You of your own essence are nothing. You know, imagine if you were to look in the mirror, and all of a sudden your reflection in the mirror said, well, I am the real, and I'm so good looking, and I achieved this degree, and I've got this phone, and I did this, and I did. You're going to turn around and look at your reflection and be like, hey, you're only a reflection of me. What do you mean you did this? You're only a reflection of me. What am I? What am I? In the same way that reflection in the mirror has nothing of itself, just reflecting what is standing on the other side of the mirror. It's just manifesting it, reflecting it. This is the same relationship between me and Allah. Allah, we are but a reflection. We are but a reflection of the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have nothing of yourself. If you had something of yourself, if you had things from yourself, you know, people say, I did this, I did that, I manage this, I do this business, I. But nothing is from you. If it was from you, ask those people that have become old, those people that need to be lifted from their beds and helped to walk. Ask that person, you know what? If it was from you, you just will for your youth to come back. If it was yours. Ask the person that is ill. Now that you are ill, just make the irada for your health to come back. It will never return. Ask the one that had wealth and has become poor. Say, look, just stand there and make the irada for your wealth to come back. Says, I can't do it. The fact that you cannot bring back that which you had tells you that you in reality have nothing from yourself. You but manifest that which Allah allows you to manifest. This whole world is balanced upon the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَبِأَسْمَائِكَ الَّتِي مَلَأَتْ أَرْكَانَ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. And through your names upon which form the pillars of all of existence. You have nothing of yourself. That's why he says, Antum kal-marda. You are like the marid. That is why Ali, with all his power and everything that he had, you see that same Ali saying, Mawlaya ya Mawla, anta al-qawiyyu wa ana al-dha'if. That you are the strong and I am the weak. Because nothing is of themselves. Everything anything in existence that is appearing around you is because you manifest from the divine names. You see because he is Basir. And you draw from his name of Basir and you see. You hear because he is Samir. Allah is Samir. And you draw from his name of Samir and so you hear. You have strength because he is Qawi. Otherwise, you yourself have nothing of your own self. And so when one understands this point, that I have nothing, my very existence is dependent on God, constantly remembering me. When I know this, that it is the way that God remembers me, that defines whether or not I continue to exist or not. When I understand this, then I will much easily walk away from sin, because I know that this is not what my Lord wants from me. This is not what my Lord wants from me. Then the Imam, you know, when an individual, he reaches this stage of doing ibadat and becoming that point, you know, the narrations, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you look at these, it's mind-boggling. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he addresses the human being. He says, Yabna Adam, O son of Adam, I am the living that shall never die. Ati'ni fima amartuk, obey me in that which I have ordered you, and I will make you the living that shall never die. He says, O son of Adam, I am the one that says to something be, and it will become. Obey me in that which I have ordered you, and I will make you the one that will say to something be, and it will become. It will become in the same way Isa alayhi salam would do that. Not that we have the total power of khalqat like Allah. There is a difference. You know, Isa alayhi salam would. And right now, you all do have a level of power of creation within you. Now that I've mentioned it, it's going to be a bit complex, but if you stay with me, inshallah, it makes sense. If I tell you right now in your mind, imagine a flower. You have a flower in your mind. Yes? For all intents and purposes, that is your creation. You have created it. Right now, you don't have the power to bring from immateriality or semi-immateriality to the realm of the material. You can't bring it from immateriality to the material. Because Isa alayhi salam could do that. He would imagine a bird in his mind and he would fashion it with his fingers. And then he would say, and anfaqa ruh, and I blow into it bi'idhnillah, with the power of Allah, and it becomes a bird. Yeah? He went from this immateriality. You see this bird that Isa alayhi salam. Now I've mentioned a bird to you. In your mind is a bird. What happened to your flower? This is exactly how it is with us and Allah. We are but a thought in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As long as Allah continues to remember you, you exist. But in the same way that you forgot about that flower, if Allah chooses to forget about you, you cease to exist. What you can do is create in that which is semi-immaterial, i.e. you can give a form but it doesn't have any weight. But Allah is saying, look, I will give you the power to bring from semi-immateriality to the material realm. All you have to do is obey me. But what Allah does, He brings it from total immateriality. Where something has no wujud, has no shape, has no form, has nothing. He brings it from total immateriality to materiality. But He has given you the ability from semi-immateriality, where you give something a form, a shape in your mind, to then bring it from that realm into the realm of the material. It's only just on the other side of the curtain, if you would imagine it. The malakut of the alam and the mulk, the only thing that connects these two realms is your heart. If your heart is pure, القلب يتردد بين الملك والملكوت. It is your heart that connects you with the mulk and the malakut. Your heart allows you to enter the realm of the mulk and the realm of the malakut, from the mulk into the malakut of the alam, to the divine kingdom. If you purify your heart through ibadat and abstinence from sin, then you'll see that your entry to the malakut is very easy. We used to do it a lot more when we were younger. See, when you dream, your dream is you entering into that malakuti realm, that barzakhi realm. It's your soul leaving and going into that realm. And that's why you come back and you have deja vu and certain things, because that realm is not bound by time and space. So, but the more we sin, the more we forget Allah, this heart becomes rusty. And so we can no longer connect with the malakuti realms. But the more we purify ourselves, the more we can begin to interact with that realm. Then the last thing that the Imam says, this is the most courageous of all of you. أشد الناس اجتهادا من ترك الذنوب. Says the strongest of all of mankind is the one who learns, or the one who is able to leave sin. Says that's the strongest person. Not the one that can lift something. Says the one that is strongest from amongst all of you is the one that can leave this sin. How is it that we can achieve all of this that the Imam has said? One simple way that I will leave with you. Again from the hadith of the Imam. Because ultimately, the purpose of the human being is to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says in Hadith Qudsi, Ya ibn Adam, kuntu kanzan makhfiya, fa'ahbabtu an a'raf, فَخَلَقْتُ الْخَلْقَ لِكَيْ أَعْرَفْ. I was a hidden treasure. I desired to be known. So I initiated creation so that they may come to know me. Meaning the ma'rifah of Allah is the ultimate game, the ultimate purpose of this game of life. How is it that I achieve that? Through one thing. Through walking upon the path. What is the best way to walk upon this path, to be a salik upon this path? The 11th Imam says, إِنَّ الْوُصُولُ إِلَى اللَّهِ سَفَرٌ لَا يُدْرِكُ إِلَّا بِإِمْتِطَاعِ اللَّيْلِ. Says that this surely, this gaining Allah, this wasl of Allah, gaining Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, safarun is a journey. لَا يُدْرِكُ. You will not be able to achieve this and go to the depth of this إلا بإمتطاع الليل, without using imtata'. Imtata' means when you ride on something. So when you get onto a horse or you get onto something, and it says إلا بإمتطاع الليل, until you learn to ride the night. Until you learn to ride the night, meaning your night ibadat, your salatul layl, your Quran at the time of sahar, your tasbih at the time of sahar. Says all of these things are which will take you towards Allah, and you will never be able to achieve closeness to Allah until you use the night. Till you use the night. Try and utilize the night as much as you can in your worship, for this will take you to heights that you could never imagine. Your salatul layl, your nawaz tahajjud, these things will raise you faster than anything. Nobody ever achieved a maqam in spiritual growth towards Allah except with without salatul layl. You can never achieve those maqamat. All of them had salatul layl in their repertoire. These are two hadiths from the 11th Imam. We pray that we're able to implement them in our life. This is the night of the Shahadat of the Imam, and also, as I said at the start, that which marks the end of our Ayyam-e Azah. It's a very difficult night. This is the night where we give bursa to our Imam, the Imam of our time. For tonight, he is the one that is mourning. You know, often we have these majalis that are held for ithal sawab. And these ithal majalis that happen, is usually you find that the sons are the bani of the majlis, those that hold the majlis. And so then the majlis of the 11th Imam, Bani is none other than the Imam of our time. Today we need to give our condolences to the Imam of our time for the death of his father. Death upon death, Madlumiyah upon Madlumiyah, different Imams, the Imam of our time mourns. But tonight is the night of his father. Say when the poison began to enter the body of Imam Hasan al-Askari, the Imam Arwahun al-Fidaya tamalmalu tamalmul al-Salim. His body began shaking, writhing on the ground. He could, many of the different poisons that were given to Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, they had different effects upon them. The poison that was given to Imam al-Hasan, it tore at his liver, forced him to vomit parts of his liver. The poison that was given to Imam al-Rada, it took the strength from his body. That Abba Sad says that I saw that the distance from the court of Ma'mun to the house of the Imam was so short, but yet Imam al-Rada would stand and fall, because the poison had taken the strength from his body. They say, and the poison that was given to Imam al-Jawad by his wife, they say at that point, it created such extreme thirst in Imam al-Jawad that the Imam would constantly call out, al-Atash, al-Atash. He would say to al-Fadl, he said, al-Fadl, bring me water. And she would stand and she would laugh at the Imam, watching the Imam die. But when it comes to Imam al-Askari, they say the effect of the poison of Imam al-Askari was this, that his whole body began to shake uncontrollably. He was unable to control the shaking that was happening. Every single one of his limbs was shaking. They say the servant says, I laid the Imam on his bed. As the time drew near, he turned to me, he says, bring my son. Says, I wasn't aware of a son of the Imam. He says, I saw the Imam saying, no, go outside, my son is waiting for me. Says, when I came out, I saw a young boy, 5, 6 years old, standing outside. I took him by the hand, he went towards Imam al-Askari. When Imam al-Askari saw him, he says, Assalamu alayki ya Sayyida Ahl Bayti. Oh, salam be upon you, oh, the leader of my Ahlul Bayt after me. It says that Imam al-Hujjah ran towards his father. He held the head of Imam al-Askari. Imam al-Askari said to him, my son, bring for me some water so that I can drink it. Imam al-Hujjah went, he brought a glass of water for Imam al-Askari. The narration say, for none other of the Imams does it say this, that when water was brought, there was so much shaking and shivering in the body of the Imam, that as he tried to drink the water, his teeth were hitting along the cup. He was unable to drink it. All of the water began to fall from his mouth. They say the Imam lay down. Imam al-Hujjah held his head in his lap. And at that moment, the soul of Imam al-Askari left his body. Oh, Imam al-Askari, you asked your son for water, but sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah, in Karbala, Hussein alayhi salam was asking for water for his son. Here a father is asking for water from his son. In Karbala, a father was asking for water for his son. How madloom, how ghareeb was Hussein on the day of Ashura, that even at that moment, this is the last majlis of the Azaa of Imam al-Hussein. Who knows whether or not we will be alive next year to mourn Abi Abdullah Hussein alayhi salam. This death was so difficult for him that he remembered you from the plains of Karbala. He said, Shi'ati laytakum fi yawmi Ashura jami'an tanzuruni kayfa astasqi litifli fa abawa in yarhamuni. Oh my Shias, how I wish you were there on the day of Ashura, and you would have seen how I took my 6-month-old child out fa abawa in yarhamuni, and what mercy they showed me, Hussein. What mercy did they show you, Ya Aba Abdullah? He holds the body of Ali Asghar. He says, Atarawna kayfa yatalazza atashan. He says, don't you see how the body of my child is shaking from thirst? How did they quench his thirst? Your Imam says in Ziyarat Lahiya, Assalamu ala tifl al-radi' mazbuhin min al-uzn My salams be upon that child who was slaughtered from ear to ear. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. مات الحسين.
يا حسين
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 يا حسين